Welcome to the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev, where we explore and share experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week from across the games industry, helping you make the best game you can. Stay tuned for today's episode. Good morning, Overload Nation. Welcome to another episode of the Daily Dev Talk, where I talk to game developers from across the world to bring you experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week. Today, I'm talking with Brad Carney from Final Boss Entertainment to talk about their first game, Wrack. Brad, talk about yourself first and how you got into the games industry.
Well, first, Adrian, thanks for having me on. I've been a longtime gamer. I kind of grew up with the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, like I suspect a lot of others have. And kind of from a young age, like I just really had this interest in kind of developing and kind of tinkering around with making games, ideas I had for various games and whatnot. And, like for a long time, it was always just kind of like an on paper kind of thing. So I would have kind of ideas for, new enemies and, new weapons and levels and whatnot. And it wasn't really until, it kind of like around, like the early '90s when Doom came out, and you actually had this is like one of the first big games that kind of had like modding kind of built into it. It's like people they would make their own level editors, so people could make their own levels, and like the Doom engine just kind of like from the get go kind of supported that without really having to do any kind of like hardcore hacking of the game. I mean, it's like so kind of from that point on, I kind of started to kind of make my own stuff. I was like really into it. It was just kind of something that like really I don't know, like just kind of like really resonated with me. And it's kind of funny, like to this day, like people are still, like making all these, big crazy Doom mods that are just unbelievable quality and creativity. So clearly that's something that resonated with a lot of others as well. And for a while, it was just kind of like a hobby kind of thing. It was just kind of something I enjoyed doing just for fun. But once they released the source code to Doom, that's when I really kind of kick things up to the next level. It was that point, it's like I had all these ideas that I had wanted to do, but wasn't really able to just because the engine didn't support those sorts of ideas at the time. But, by taking the source code, actually going in and modifying that, building new features into Doom and everything, things like internet multiplayer, capture the flag, bots, new weapons, that kind of thing. It kind of started to really get a lot more serious. And at that point, I developed enough skill that I kind of attracted the attention of a couple of professional studios, and I ended up getting a job, working at a place called Black Ops Entertainment for a couple of years. So I kind of got some official industry experience. At that point, I kind of decided to. I decided I wanted to pursue my dream of starting my own video game company, something I had wanted to do since I was a little kid, and that's kind of what led to Final Boss Entertainment and Rack.
That's pretty a generic route into the games industry as regards to hobbies and mods on the side and going into it.
Sure, sure.
What was your role at Black Ops?
I was a junior programmer.
Ah,
Ultimately, it was the programming skills that caught their interest. I was kind of responsible for things like implementing like an inventory system and kind of like a display
right.
for kind of like low level stuff. As opposed to write the engine, write our rendering effects. That kind of thing.
Mm,
But
okay, all right. Wow, okay, that's pretty cool. I know a bit of programming myself, like inheritance, OO, variables, loops, if,
yeah,
so
yeah,
on and so
yeah.
forth. But I just know the ultra basics of it. I tried using Unreal Script, and it's
Okay.
like, whoa, Unreal Script is horrible. And okay, programming not really for me. No
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, yeah.
I'll stick to animation.
It is funny, I do it's I mean, I went to school a little bit for programming. I ultimately didn't get a degree in programming. I kind of dropped those classes, but it's kind of like the way a lot of programming is presented, like in an educational fashion. They present it in such like an abstract form that it's like it doesn't really it's not really like relatable at all. It's like I kind of feel like if you talk to students about like here's how to script an enemy, like something they can really like wrap their brains around, it's like I feel like they would be able to pick up programming much more easily than here today we're going to write a program to figure out prime numbers. It's like, who cares about that? Like
Hmm.
no one's really interested in that, I don't think. Of course there
I
are,
can
but
understand.
it's just it's the programming is usually just presented in such an abstract way that I don't feel like people can wrap their brains around it. And I think that's unfortunate because it
Mm.
does make like I don't really think programming is like all that difficult. Like it doesn't need to be, certainly. Um, so
Okay, I get you, but generally though, it just wasn't for me. Just
gotcha,
wasn't for
gotcha, and
me.
that's perfectly fair. So
So how long you had worked at Black Ops?
uh,
Because eventually you started your own studio.
right, right. I was there for a couple years. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, this was like in the early 2000s.
Uh-huh.
So
And you wanted to start your own studio because
it was always
of
something I had wanted to do. I mean, ever since I
hmm.
was a little kid. Yeah, it was just always been a dream of mine to kind of have my own studio, make my own games, and it's kind of what I found is it's certainly more of a collaborative thing than maybe I once envisioned. Even though we're an indie studio, we're fairly small. It's still like it's still a team effort largely. We have lots of talented people working. Who worked on Rack and are also working on this new game. Well, have all sorts of input, and
Hmm.
it's you definitely have to take that into consideration, because I mean, you as one person, like no one has, no one's just like talented in every single area. So I mean, you need talented artists, you need talented, modelers to kind of. I think any good team, everyone has like a complementary skill set. It's I mean, one person's good at one thing, one person's good at one thing. It's never really like one person's great at everything.
Hmm.
So
It tended to be that the smaller the studio, the more generalized everyone had to be.
sure, yeah. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
I found myself wearing way too many hats. I mean, in
Yeah.
addition to being the lead programmer and doing the scripting, the story and the level design. Yeah, it's like I also have to run the business. I gotta worry about the
Hmm.
finances and the producing and making sure everyone has things to do, and that they're doing a good job and doing things to the best of their ability. It's
Oh
a big
yeah.
job.
I can only imagine and sympathise. Oddly enough, that since starting this daily dev talk, I've really had the idea to start my own studio
Oh,
in the
okay.
future. When Game Overload has grown, because at the moment it's just a Steam key store,
Right.
and this is part of my marketing strategy to be an authority and network as well, and get ideas and
Gotcha.
add value and such. So one thing I'm going to do is, as this is big, start a studio aside alongside it as well, and be developing and publishing because I already got the community and the marketing. So it's just I know how to make games, so let's just do that
Right.
as well. So that's really cool. Um, did you also start your own studio for the liberty and the freedom to make your own game, as opposed to being given someone else's dream and vision on what the game should be and should look like?
Yeah, I honestly that was a big part of it. Yeah, I think a lot of people have heard, kind of horror stories about, kind of meddlesome
Mm.
publishers and, kind of overlords who, maybe not share your artistic vision. They just kind of want to do things to kind of make money. But, yeah, I mean, that was a big fear getting into this. But I think kind of what I've learned, going through this is it is valuable to have people who maybe study the industry and kind of have a better inkling of what's going to work more than you do. Because yeah, I mean, chances are, like, if you're a developer, your nose is to the metal, whatever the term is, head to the grind, so whatever it is. But it's like you're working on your game, you're working on it really hard, and you're probably not studying industry trends. You're probably not kind of studying other games to kind of see what's worked with them. You're probably only listening to at the most the feedback on your own game versus like the feedback on other games in the industry. So I do think while I got into this thinking like, hey, I'm not going to let these guys tell me what to do. Oh, they don't know anything. I think kind of what I've learned is that, I think there is some value in, people who, are, they're not clouded by, kind of like the experience of working on one game. People, I think there's wisdom in people to in looking at people who've kind of taken a step back, and maybe have some helpful advice, based on their perspective, who mean well. So
Hmm. That's pretty cool.
I,
So,
I can elaborate on that a little more if you'd like.
no, not just yet. Not
Okay,
just
all
yet.
right,
There's
all right,
plenty of time.
all right.
So let's talk about Rack, Brad.
Sure.
Tell us about the game and what you wanted the player to experience.
So Rack, it is kind of the what we. It's funny, This is kind of going back to what we were just talking about. How it's like I kind of wish I'd had some wise people, kind of overseeing what I was doing. What we were kind of going for with Rack was we were kind of going for a fusion of a cel shaded first person shooter. And specifically a Doom style shooter, kind of the classic run and gun. You keep all your weapons, no regenerating health. Basically just like really hardcore run gun fun. And then we were kind of trying to fuse that with like kind of like a platformer game. Something kind of like a Contra or a Mega Man. Something where it's like there's a live system, there's checkpoints, so you're not having to worry about quick saving. You're just kind of running around playing. The game kind of quote unquote saves for you. But there's bosses at the end of every area. Bosses who have like this kind of cool pattern that you got to figure out. Because I mean, let's be honest. Like a lot of the bosses that you see in like I don't know, like Quake and Serious Sam, it's like oh, press the switch and then that kills. Like it's like something like that. Whereas like the bosses in Rack, it's like they have some kind of like pattern for you to learn. And it's like the first time you get to it, it's like the boss just like annihilates you, and then it's like kind of like as you play it a couple times, you're like okay, wait, I see what's going on here, and then you kind of like figure out the pattern, kind of figure out how the guy works, and then you could like beat him like without taking any damage. And like it's just this like really satisfying, nice feeling. Kind of figuring it out and overcoming it. So it's like we try to do like a game that's kind of like a fusion of those two genres.
There's also no reloading.
Yes, no reloading. This part of what's kind of cool about this game is it kind of has this like kill streak system, which is it's kind of like a combo system and like fighting games. So it's like as you kill like one monster and then another and another and another and another, like there's this like little like a doot 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 sound that kind of goes like as you're killing monsters one after the other. And it's kind of like if we had reloading in this game, it would kind of interfere with that big time.
Mm.
But it would also like kind of clash with like the whole like action element. Like this is like one of the few shooters that's like out now where it's like we want you to be out in the open. We want you to be killing as many things as quickly and as awesomely as possible. We don't want you hiding behind chest high walls waiting for your health to regenerate and the red jam over your face to go away.
But do you not think that because you've added elements of fast-paced FPS with platforming, that kind of breaks the flow? So you enter in these rooms getting like 10, 20, 30 kill streaks, boop, 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 so on and so forth, but then suddenly once it's all over, you got to jump over a platform or jump onto a little bridge to get to the button to press it to open the door to proceed to the level. Does that not kind of break the flow, you think, at all?
Yeah, I mean, the platforming elements have definitely not been well embraced by the audience. And earlier in the game, it's like earlier in the development of the game, like we had way more in terms of like a platform in the game. So like, kind of actually, what's there now is like the game with the platforming elements like way toned down. Like for the most part, like there aren't any jumps like you have to make or else you die. There's only a couple of those. I mean, we've kind of replaced a couple areas in the game that did have those kind of jumps with like just kind of like narrow walkways. So it's like if you slip and fall, you end up in the lava. But it's not necessarily like you missed a jump. But yeah, it's I mean. I did kind of want to have the platforming elements in the game because like I felt like it really added to the tension of the game. It's like if you're having to make some kind of like a jump over lava, like there's that moment of like, oh my god, am I gonna make it? Oh my god! And then it's like once you get over, it's like, oh phew, I made it. But as it kind of turns out, I mean, a lot of the people who play the game, they kind of just thought that was annoying. They didn't experience that exhilaration. I think a lot of people, it's like they don't like making jumps in first person because I think they're kind of used to like kind of looking at like where their character is when they jump, so they know like whether or not you're about on the ledge to make the jump, or is like in this game we kind of wanted you to kind of internalize your position, kind of have a sense of where you are without necessarily like looking at your feet to know where you are. So
Mhm.
we probably asked a little bit much of the players, with the whole like platforming in first person. I also think that there's just kind of like the sense out there in the gaming public, thanks to things like I don't know, like Turok and what is it, like the Zan levels in Half Life, that there's just kind of this perception out there that platforming in first person is automatically bad.
I've not heard of this idea before. If being in first person is a bit bad, I've not heard that. Kind of understandable
It's
because it's a bit
it's kind of
difficult to see
popularized by
exactly where you are.
yeah, it's something that's been put out there by Yahtzee. I know a lot.
Hmm.
But yeah.
I noticed when I first launched the game, there was some Steam Workshop mods that were not mode Doom. I was going to say mood then, but Doom
Yeah, yeah,
that was related to the game. That was pretty cool to
yeah,
see.
yeah, certainly.
Um, I also felt that the game was quite fast paced as well, which is pretty cool, really.
Yeah, oh
Although
yeah.
I find two of the things, the Hyperblade, bit of a cliche name, don't you think?
Perhaps. I mean, try to think of something cool. I mean, maybe it's a little generic, but yeah.
Oh, it works though, and also from a game narrative point of view, at the start it talks about the world is in like perfect peace
Mhm,
and things like that, and it's like there's no problems whatsoever, unlimited food, fuel, energy, so on and so forth.
mhm.
I remember inventors or writers or futurists from the 19th century or from the 1950s predicting that by like now 2015, because of how much technology would have moved forward, that all these ideas of strife and famine and all the rest would be out the window, and people would have a lot of free time and a lot of leisure.
Yeah, yeah.
And they couldn't predict that the people would invent other things like internet and such, and they couldn't predict other scenarios and situations that would have changed the status quo and changed world events. So I'm curious from a narrative point of view as to why you chose exactly this concept of the future is perfect, when we know that even from our own history that this idea of the future being perfect isn't always attainable.
Right. Well, it definitely does kind of fly in the face of a lot of other games and kind of stories that have come out, of the kind of apocalyptic future. It's like everything from like I don't know, The Walking Dead to I mean, countless other examples. It's like the future is almost always portrayed as apocalyptic. Something's gone horribly wrong. And I don't know, I kind of wanted to do something a little different. I think I'm definitely kind of an optimist when it comes to the future. If you look at just the incredible amount technology has advanced, like from like even the 1900s, she's just a blink in the eye in terms of even human history. Yeah, I just feel like you fast forward another 50 years or so, and I feel like I just feel like things can like really progress even tons better.
Mm.
Tons quicker than they have in the past 50 years. So
Yes, the best technology is yet to come.
I certainly think so. And I mean, we think we have everything now, but I mean, I
No.
feel like there's tons more we can do. I think there's tons more out there left to invent. And
30 years from now, 2015 will be looked at like the Stone Age.
I really think so. I really,
I was looking at a few sitcoms like Only Fools and Horses, and it's all set in the 1980s, and it's like the way they lived, telephones, a wire on the walls, stuff like that, and it's like, wow, that is completely caveman
I mean,
compared to
can you
what
believe
we
how
have
much the
now.
internet has progressed, like in the past
Oh
10
yes,
years? Even I
yes,
mean, it's incredible.
exponentially.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And yeah, I think if you continue that exponential growth, I mean, why couldn't we have something that kind of converts any kind of matter into any other kind of matter? It's like turn your desk into gold. I mean, why not? I mean,
I see. Well,
certainly from a science physics standpoint. I mean, it's certainly possible. I mean, there's just as much energy in a pound of wood than there is a pound of gold. I mean,
mm,
it's certainly something that's feasible. But it's I kind of started with that. But it's basically, I mean, at the end of the day, it is kind of a contrived plot device. It's the Dragon Balls. It's it's something. to kind of set the events of the story in motion.
Hmm.
And it's also, I mean, it's also kind of a bit of a commentary on kind of kind of our society and as a whole. It's basically it's kind of saying it's like, if you get too complacent, if you get too happy, you get too spoiled. I mean, you kind of let your guard down, and I mean, things can easily those vulnerabilities can easily be exploited from places where you least expect it, like aliens and robots.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Hmm. Well, speaking of gold, Brad, how did you go about promoting the game, and what worked and what didn't work so well for Rack?
So we tried a lot of different things because I mean, this is a game like we spent 6 years working on. I mean it's definitely, I mean, this is definitely something that's had a considerable amount of effort put into it and a considerable amount of thought. Kind of like when we started, kind of getting it out there in the public. I guess kind of like the first really big thing we did was we sold the alpha of it, which was kind of, was that like 2012. So I mean, what we were kind of trying to do was kind of follow the Minecraft approach, where it's like you put on an alpha and then you kind of continually work on it and upgrade the quality of it. And, kind of hopefully your audience is appreciating that, and kind of the updates are kind of getting people's attention. You're kind of growing and growing. Unfortunately, that did not end up happening with us, for various reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I mean, we kind of sold the alpha like on our website. I think sold that for like $10. But at that point, we we kind of try to do like monthly updates, but kind of the audience kind of stopped caring. It's kind of, we kind of had like a big bunch of interest like in the beginning. We got a Total Biscuit video. He did a WTF is of it. Around, I think a few months after that pre-alpha. So it's like we had like another big spike of activity there. But all in all, like instead of it kind of taking off like Minecraft, like it kind of died out. So we kind of stopped doing those updates, and we kind of started just kind of like really buckling down and focusing on Steam Greenlight. Kind of getting that all. Kind of getting the version we would eventually put on Steam already. Kind of giving people something to kind of look forward to. We didn't want to kind of let the air out of the balloon again.
Hmm.
We eventually got through Greenlight, and then we kind of launched on Steam in early access. And kind of one of the things we did to promote that was we hired a PR firm. And one of the big pieces of advice he had for us was you should put an ad on a rock paper shotgun. And I was like, okay, isn't that going to be incredibly expensive? Shouldn't we do some small thing? And he's like, no, I mean, all you need to do is like sell 1,000 copies, and that'll easily pay for itself. And it's like, look, that's where your audience is, blah blah blah. So he contacted them, and as it turns out, it was going to be incredibly expensive. And I was kind of like, are you sure about this? Are you sure you want me to do this? And he's like, yeah. I had an ad made up, gave it to them, and we had that up on Rock Paper Shotgun the week we launched on Steam in early access. And as far as I can tell, the ad did absolutely nothing. So that was a lot of money that was just kind of down the drain. Kind of what I've kind of learned from kind of what I've read in recent times. There's this guy who has this site called Steam Spy, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. But it's, I mean, this guy writes all kinds of articles on Steam and kind of what it takes to be successful on Steam, and kind of like the Steam Spy site. It has like all kinds of data. You basically like look up like what any game has sold, which is rather incredible. But it's basically your early access launch is your launch. It's, I mean, the approach that I had been, the paradigm I was working under was, it's like as the quality of the game increases, people will become more and more interested in the game, will just continue to do better and better, when in fact that is not the case whatsoever. Usually what more times than not happens is that is that first impressions are everything. Yeah, it's like the first time people see it, they're gonna make up their mind about it right then and there, based on the quality level of the game at the time that they're seeing it. So if people see it in its alpha state and it's like really ugly and brown, the colors are all off, and the gameplay is not there, they're going to make up their mind based on that. And no matter what you do in the future to improve the quality of the game, they're not going to change their mind. Those people are not going to be interested. And by the way, this goes for people in the media as well. So, if people, if you put out like this big update that, all of a sudden makes the game good when it wasn't before, all those media people who already saw your game and you know, like they're not going to all of a sudden be interested and change their mind and give you coverage. Like they're gonna be like, I've seen this already, blah blah blah. I don't need to further waste my time with this. So we were in early access for a while. That launch, the final product ended up looking like a ton better than what we launched with on Steam. Um, but it's like we kind of tried to do like what Don't Starve did. uh when that game was in early access, it was like every couple weeks they would put out like this big update. It would have like a catchy name, like a nice clever name. It would have a trailer, it would have kind of like a custom image, promotional image for it. And it's like we did this too. We kind of took that approach. We put the trailers on our YouTube channel. We post the announcements on Steam, and I mean, it really didn't seem to have too terribly much of an impact, unfortunately. But if
I th-
go ahead.
I think that the reason why games like Minecraft and Don't Starve went big is because they had a massive replayability
Yes,
factor,
yes, yes.
such as that creative element. There's other kinds like educational entertainment, but in this case, it was a creative element that you could build anything you could
Right.
imagine.
Uh-huh.
Or in Don't Starve, it was you could survive however you can, however you want,
Exactly. Yeah.
and it's
Like
like
there was
these churn factors helps people come back.
right. There was always a reason to come back to it. So yeah, I think you're exactly right about that. And that's kind of what we've realized, too late. So that's actually a big reason why, even though early access, I don't think it really worked out well for us, and kind of selling the alpha, it didn't really work out for Rack. This next game we're working on, because we're really focusing on the replay ability of the game. I feel like that would be a much better fit for this next game.
Hmm.
So
So, how did you go about funding the game exactly? Because it's 6 years, so that's quite a lot to ask for a game development process.
right. Well, for one, I kept costs down by trying to do as much by myself as possible. So, I mean, that's, we didn't have an engine license. I wrote the engine, from scratch. Yeah, I did the level design, all the scripting and, story, all that stuff. That was all kind of done by me. So, I mean, it was basically free. Um, but it's I had some money from working. So I kind of had some left over. Yeah, I had a couple of friends who I was on good terms with, and were kind of willing to do things fairly on the cheap side. And a lot of this is we didn't really have professionals working on it for the most part. It was people who were kind of figuring things out, as they went. Yeah, it's like our now extremely skilled, lead artist. He's a guy who lives in the Netherlands, and it's like when he first started on the project, like it's like I don't think he had really like made video game textures before. It's like his experience was like in a print media, like working on like
That's
websites.
that's quite a big skill change,
Yeah, yeah,
as
certainly.
such. So, what was cut from Rack, and why?
Well, for one, 2 episodes. We which a lot of people are not happy about. But it's like when the game was first envisioned, it was incredibly ambitious. It's like we wanted to do like 3 full episodes of the game, like 8 weapons. And it's like every 2 levels would have like its own texture set and environment. Kind of like the way it is in like a platformer game. It's like level 1 and 2 of Mega Man are not the same at all. It's like one level is like the fire level, one level is like the ice level. So it's like we were kind of trying to do that same kind of thing in Rack, because I mean that was kind of the premise of the game, whether or not people perceived that. But so it's like we kind of had all these plans for it. Eventually, kind of when we got to like around the alpha phase, it was just like taking forever. We were like 3 years into this, and it was like we didn't have like a completed level yet. I was gonna be. I had to eventually cut the scope of the game to okay. We'll make this one game. We'll make this one episode, and then clearly the game is going to be a success. So like we'll just do episode 2 and 3 as like DLC. Um, and then it's like, and then once the game kind of came out, and yeah, like it did well, but like not like super well. Not it wasn't. It's no Minecraft. But
Mm-hmm.
it just we just didn't see just the demand there for like 2 more episodes. So we were gonna do a Kickstarter to like fund the other 2 episodes, but it was just kind of like I mean, I'd rather put our efforts towards something that I think people will appreciate more. And as it is right now, I don't think there's a lot of demand right now for old school shooters. I don't think a lot of that demand is being satisfied by things like the new Shadow Warrior or the new Doom that's about to come out. So it isn't really
I
room for a
understand.
game
I see.
like Rack. What's that?
I understand. I
Oh
see.
yeah,
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 it's just the market
yeah.
the market at the moment.
Exactly, yeah.
Uh,
But, we
so
we cut the
so
episodes, we cut, a couple playable characters, and as a result of cutting the episodes, it's like a lot of monsters and weapons unfortunately did not get done. And unfortunately, that means that the game is also left on a cliffhanger in terms of the story, so,
well, that's
so,
good. So, what was the biggest thing you learned while working on the game?
This is hard. I mean, just making games, it's just, oh my God, like being successful, in this industry, I just think it's incredibly difficult. It's like you've got to not only do you have to have like a ton of skill and probably a lot of different areas, but you have to know the right people. You have to have the right people helping you. You've got to have like a concept that is going to speak to people right off the bat. And probably in a lot of ways, you got to be at the right place in the right time. If you were on Steam 5 years ago, your game probably did really well. If you're launching a game now on Steam, you're probably in some trouble. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean the Steam Spy guy, he talks about this a lot. And, he has a lot of kind of metrics to kind of back that up. It's like the amount of games that have been released on Steam, like the past year or two. It's like more than I don't know the previous 10 years combined. I mean it's crazy. It's so
Yeah,
saturated.
yes. Yes, the first 6 months of 2014, more games were released than the entire 2013. So yeah, increasingly saturated.
Yeah,
This is why I think 5, 10, 15 years from now, Steam might not be number one or certainly the status quo because something else will come along that will break the status quo and just like correct all the not injustices but all the imbalance, so
right.
to speak.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how things shape out. Because I mean, you see the same kind of problems like in the mobile store. Uh,
Ah, yes.
so
Well, so Brad, what was the worst thing that happened, and how did you overcome it?
um, oh gosh, man, I don't know. I can't really point to any kind of like single solitary event, but yeah, I would just kind of say like everything kind of leading up to the release and kind of like the kind of promoting the release of it. It was just a really stressful time. Because I knew like everything that was writing, on everything going well. Yeah, like specifically, like last year at this time, right now, it's like we were headed to QuakeCon in Dallas. We got a booth. Kind of had like big signs and posters made and everything. We got a bunch of computer equipment, so people could play the game, and it was like just kind of like heading into that. It was like there were just so many unknowns. It was like, okay, like our our texture artist, he's from the Netherlands, and he forgot to like Dallas is like 4 hours away from where I am in Houston, and it's like he forgot to like bring his like a license with him, so it was like I don't know if we were gonna like have driven all the way up there, and then it's like if he was gonna like not be let in because like he didn't have his ID with him, just like so, but it's like it's like for like the first day like we got there. I didn't know if we were gonna have power, for our booth to kind of run the equipment because
Hmm.
for those who haven't like run a booth at one of these events, it's like yeah, sometimes you got to pay for power. That's not like an included thing in a
I never knew. I never
yeah.
knew about that.
And neither did I going into that. It's such a crazy
So,
thing.
also, it's the great unknown about the whole industry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So, what was the best game dev purchase you made? Whether it was a license or a top quality piece of hardware or equipment, or could simply be a comfortable chair and a good desk?
Well, hey, a comfortable chair cannot be understated. Although I was lucky to receive a good one for Christmas, so I can't take credit for buying that myself. But that's definitely a very important thing. Honestly, like I didn't buy a whole lot in terms of equipment. Kind of fancy gadgets. It's funny. I actually, for a long time, I intentionally had a crappy computer while I was making the game purely because I wanted to force myself to optimize and make the game run well. If you have like a big fancy computer and like the game always runs well, no matter how poorly optimized it is, you're gonna get real lazy about making the game run well and all that. So for a long time, like I actually had like a very subpar machine. And then eventually when I was like making the levels, and they were getting like really, really big and really convoluted. I was like, you know what, forget it. I need a much better machine for this. I'm not gonna. Every time I move the mouse to rotate the level, I don't want it to take 2 hours to turn it, and then every time I
Mm.
light map it to take like 4 days. That's no fun. But yeah, I think the one thing I was really excited about licensing was the fonts. Some of the fonts in the game. It's like we have a couple like really comic-y fonts, and it's like for a long time we were using like unlicensed versions and kind of other like placeholder stuff. But it's like when I actually officially got the licenses for them, and I got a couple additional ones I could use. One of the ones we had been using, like after licensing, I got like the lowercase version of the font. I was just like, oh man, this is really cool. Like it just really made the game look a ton better. It was just cool. Like it just, guys are visual. You get something that looks cool and makes the text look cool. I mean, it's exciting.
Hmm. So, what game development related book, lecture, or learning resource can you recommend?
Oh, man, what is it? There's a guy who runs I think it's like a programming and software blog. His name is Joel Spolsky. But it's he talks about a bunch of things like for example, like it's very difficult to change users' expectations for things. So more often than not, like it's just better to kind of roll with what they're expecting instead of kind of trying to like reprogram people. Like for instance, like if people automatically expect like when I hit the escape key, the menu comes up, just go with it. Just put the menu on escape. Don't try and like retrain them to like press M for the menu. But he has a bunch of like useful like little blogs that have advice like that. I think one of his books is called Joel on Software. But it just helps so much like in terms of like just kind of like interface design and kind of just like good programming practices. He's just like a really smart guy, and it's just really great stuff.
That's cool to know.
Yeah.
And like an Evernote or Trello, do you have a useful or productivity enhancing software, app, extension, or website worth sharing?
We've started using Trello. We didn't for Rack. Thankfully the team was small enough that kind of it was pretty easy to kind of manage like what needed to be done. We started using Trello, and I really recommend it. Like it's really cool. And it's not only useful for like kind of managing all the different team members and kind of like what needs to be done and everything, but it's also kind of cool for the audience. For like this new game, it's like we got some like beta testers for it, and they're kind of able to look at the Trello board and see like, oh, cool, like this weapon's being worked on. Oh, that's looking good so far. And they kind of see like kind of what's coming down the pipeline, and it's just really cool. It's something I wish I had used earlier, but it definitely recommend it.
Oh, interesting, cool. Because it encourages other people because they see what's happening and
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
being made.
Yeah, I think Rust has kind of done the same thing. It's like they have a public board, so it's like people can go look and see, like, oh, hey, they're working on this. Oh, cool. So
As in, like, open for the public,
yes,
public
yeah.
board. Ah, cool. That's interesting.
Yep.
That's a cool concept.
Yep.
So, what advice can you give to aspiring game developers, small indie studios, and people who are trying to get to where you are today?
It's I think because of the level of saturation there is now in the gaming industry, I think really focus on the premise of your game. Just really make sure like the idea is really good and is like if people aren't interested after you've described the game in a sentence or so, go back to the drawing board. Like you're probably not going to your game is probably too hard of a sell, and that's probably not going to interest people. But yeah, I would say that kind of along the same lines. It's perception is everything. Um, it's I mean, well, we kind of like when we kind of started with Rack. It's like we kind of had this idea of like, hey, yeah, it's gonna be like a first person Mega Man kind of thing. And then when people kind of play the game after like the first 10 seconds, they only really perceived like the Doom like elements of it. So kind of everything else, all the little nuanced details we had in there, kind of get lost in that. And see, and it's like kind of all the effort we put into, kind of the Contra-ish, the Mega Man-ish elements, the lives and the checkpoints and the, kind of the level hazards and the bosses. Like it all kind of got ignored because it didn't kind of fit with people's perception of the game as kind of, an old school shooter. So
Okay,
we ended up
cool.
wasting a lot of effort on that, unfortunately. And I implore people to not make my mistakes. So.
Say that again.
I implore people not to make my mistake.
Oh yeah. Okay. I thought you said something else.
Oh no.
So what's next for you, Brad? And what's the best way to contact you?
Well, we are working on a new game. It's kind of a tower defense, first person shooter kind of thing. It cover other little elements of that, but gonna kind of keep that under wraps until we're ready. But it's kind of we're kind of taking Rack, kind of rebooting it basically. Kind of changing the premise a little bit because what did I just say about the premise being important? But we're trying to listen to a lot of the feedback people gave us on Rack. Kind of listening to what worked and what didn't. Basically we're making a new game, and it's really coming along well. Between the Trello and everything, I mean, much better managed. But yeah, so I mean, that's what we're working on next. Really excited about it. Just very happy with how it's coming along. Should do. Well, I'm not gonna promise anything, but yeah, and the best way people can get in contact with me is probably Twitter. I am at FBE Carnival. And I mean, you can follow Rack on Twitter. That is at Rack Game. You can also find it on Facebook. And hey, if any of you, I don't know when this is going up, but if any of you out there are going to QuakeCon this weekend, I'll be there as well. So you can come yell at me in person. So
cool. Okay, brilliant. Okay, no, that's all right. Thanks a lot. Brad, it appears that we're out of time for this episode of the Daily Dev Talk. Been amazing to talk to you. A lot of information, a lot of experience worthwhile sharing, a lot of value to add to the pool of experience and stories and lessons. I wish you well in future endeavors.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned for more episodes of Overload Nation. More to come.
Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted me to talk there.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev. If you are a game developer that wants to get your name and game out there and to share your experiences and stories, or you have feedback or opinions of the show, then contact me at info@gameoverload.co.uk. That's info@gameoverload.co.uk. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, more to come.